The irony of this compassion argument always is that every problem, I believe, I can't think of a problem that we have as a state or as a country that wasn't caused by government intervention and overactivity in the marketplace. Do you know of any off the top of your head issues?
I would agree with you completely. I mean, I see the current situation that we are in our federal government and our state government as a result of intervention by do-gooders. I don't mean people that actually do good, but people that claim to be doing good.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, because it's obvious that none of this is actually constructive, that the compassion argument, the empathy argument, is a smokescreen for election rigging.
Right, and the end result is that you end up with potentially creating a crisis in the healthcare industry, a crisis in our state's economy. But guess who benefits from a crisis? The big government officials that are there to save the day.
It's all a setup, create crisis. So I'm getting an education right now, because in some small way, I thought maybe 1% of what the Democrats do was actually had behind it the desire to make government better. And now I realize that there's not one tiny bit of any of this that does anything except sell out our system of government, the most productive, the most successful government in the history of mankind. They've been working since FDR or beyond to destroy it. And here they are with a wonderful opportunity, having destroyed the state's economy.
Yeah, I don't want to characterize everyone who self-identifies as a Democrat in that way, because
I don't mean voters. Are you talking voters or politicians even?
I mean, I think it's hard to believe that anyone who's actually elected to state or federal office could possibly be as uninformed as you would have to be to not see what we're talking about as clearly as we do. But I don't doubt that there are some of my colleagues that I would call them true believers, that they do believe in a socialist utopia, that ultimately is the way to prosperity. I mean, every bit of evidence that you could collect or point to says otherwise. But I don't blame people on the street. I mean,
No, and I don't mean to. So thank you for making that point. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that if I could say one thing that's wrong with both our state and federal government, it's just too big. Forget everything else. I mean, the fact is that the motivations of the elected officials would matter so much less if they did not have the power to do the things that they do. And I think that's what we've lost more than anything. The average person on the street who's not really paying attention to our state government and what's happening, I sympathize with them, because they shouldn't have to. They should not have to worry what Senator Sampson or anyone else is doing, because it's not really going to impact their lives that much, because they're free citizens doing their own thing as envisioned by our founders. But sadly, that's not the case. The government has tremendous power, and it can alter the outcomes and the livelihoods of every person in this state and this country. And that, to me, is the danger of all of it, because they are picking and choosing who's going to succeed and who's going to fail, and they're not doing it for good reasons.
Senator Rob Sampson is here for his weekly visit on WTIC. So let's run through some more of these. We talked about the sugary drinks last week, and that was a very popular subject. The Democrats looking to the particular measure we were discussing. Maybe there's something different, Rob. We were talking about banning sugary drinks from children's menus at restaurants, which is one of the silliest proposals you could imagine, because all you would have to do if you wanted to get your kid a cola or some other soda or some other sugary drink was order it off the adult menu. I mean, it's so naive and so silly, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the motivation behind it is to pander to a certain part of the population that thinks the government's role is to take care of everyone and play mommy and daddy.
Because they love the children.
Right, exactly. I mean, as if anyone who thinks that it's okay to have sodas on the children's menu doesn't care about children. It's an absurd argument.
And if they really want to help the children, and that's the way to do it, why would they not ban the sale of sugary drinks in stores? Because that's the problem. Isn't people going out once a week with their kids? The problem is what happens in between.
Yeah, this is the same hypocrisy that exists with cigarettes. I bring this up all the time. The federal and state government have both sued tobacco companies to take in all of this money, which they use to educate people about the dangers of smoking, and also to fund things they care about. They just raised the tobacco tax in the last state budget also. And the thing is that, if you're not funding things that you actually care about with that money, I don't understand. You must really want the people to keep smoking then, right? Because otherwise you're not going to collect that tax.
But smoking numbers are going down, aren't they?
I think they are. But they're making up for that by simply just increasing the amount of the tax, which is necessary if you're actually using that money to fund some other program, maybe daycare or something like that. It's clear to me that they care about the revenue from it. So they don't really want the revenue to dry up because, as you said, if cigarettes are that bad, then just ban them.
Yeah, but you could tax anything and everything, right? You can tax methane emissions from cows, for example.
Right.
All right, let's move down this list of wonderful things there. Energy drinks, a ban on children under, 16 from drinking them?
Yes. I don't know too much about that bill, but there is a bill out there, and I think it's a result of one incident where someone had a unfortunate reaction to drinking energy drinks as a young child, and now, of course, we have to ban them.
Save all the children. Okay, voting laws. Talk about some of the proposed changes to make it easier for people who know nothing about public policy and politics but who have been indoctrinated in public schools to vote for Democrats. How about getting them the right to vote?
Right. There is going to be a tremendous amount of emphasis this legislative session in expanding voting to areas where it benefits the Democrats. Sorry to say. The thing is, I encourage people to vote also, but I want to make sure that people who do vote are educated about the issues. And more important than anything, if you're going to expand voting, you need to make sure you keep up the integrity of elections at the same time. And that's what I'm fearful of. We passed legislation to have Election Day registration and voting in Connecticut. I think it was a mistake the way it was brought out. It was not done with respect for the system, and there were countless stories of confusion and potential fraud that occurred in this most recent election. And now they want to double down on that by actually having Election Day registration and voting at the polling location, which of course is going to create so much more chaos because you're going to have people who are not eligible to vote in lines with people who are. And I don't know how you're going to keep track of that, not to mention the cost to the individual towns that have to host these things. There's also
it's odd. It's odd, in particular, when there are complaints about crowds causing a breakdown of the system at the polls on Election Day. So to give them new jobs to do seems like it's designed to make there be more breakdowns.
Right. Well, the Secretary of State is also putting forth some legislation to require municipalities to be more prepared for elections. And therefore more staffing and more cost and more taxes. But Todd, just a couple of things. Let me run them down really quick. There is a bill to actually expand voting on college campuses. And I see this as an overt attempt to make sure that they try and drive up the youth vote as much as possible.
Well, especially for kids in town from other places who often leave town around election time and don't bother to vote. So if you can actually go onto the campus and force them to vote like you force people in projects and things like that, that would be beneficial for the left.
There are proposals for early voting, no excuse absentee voting. And one thing that I think is worthy of conversation, that is there are a number of bills designed to let criminals vote. Currently, you are allowed and your voting rights are restored after you serve a sentence and you're free and free clear, you get your voting rights back. There is a bill out there to allow actual criminals in prison to vote, basically doing away with that prohibition. There's another one that says that we're going to allow people on parole to vote. That bill's been around a number of times. As far as I'm concerned, you're still serving your sentence. When your sentence is completed, that's at the point when your voting rights should be restored. If you're on parole, you're still serving your sentence, whether you're actually in prison or not. And then
all right, Senator Sampson, do this last one in like 10 seconds, and we have to wrap up.
Oh, very good. I'll just say that I think these are bad ideas, all designed to make more people vote and have less control over the system.
Senator Rob Sampson, thank you for the update on the new leftist proposals. We will keep our eye on them and keep talking about them. Thank you for your help with that.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, Todd.
All right, Rob, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to After 6.